Ladies and gentlemen, the World Trade Organization is honored to be part of the global effort for coordinating responses to the current global food security crisis. Our contribution to this major struggle is twofold. First, we try to keep the market transparent. We ask our members to notify the trade measures that they are taking, restrictive or facilitating, in relation to food trade. Keeping market transparent is extremely important because it helps control for the risk of chain reaction and proliferation of restrictive measures. If you do not know what your neighbor is doing, you might be tempted to adopt preemptive policies restricting trade. Transparency also helps fighting speculation on food price. We currently count 23 countries which have adopted 39 trade restrictive measures prohibiting exports of food, feed, and fertilizer. It is rather stable for the moment. Our second mission is to try to keep the market open. Our rules recognize to every country the right to adopt restrictive trade measures in times of crisis, particularly for food. What we ask them is to keep these measures focused, proportionate, and reversible so as to come back to normal trading situation as soon as possible. The trade restrictions have contributed to the rise in global food and fertilizers prices. Global wheat prices, for instance, have risen to a 10-year high with a surge in future contracts of over 50%. It has had a dramatic impact on the World Food Programme's cost of doing business. Keeping market open is essential to allow the flow of food from regions in surplus to regions with a deficit. This is the essential contribution of trade to food security. What are the actions that we have been taking to contribute to this global response? First, we do contribute actively to the interagency work. This group, under the Secretary General Authority, is the most important and overarching endeavor. But we also talk daily, including at leaders level, to our partners from IMF, World Bank, FAO, World Food Programme. Second, we engage with the private sector. We maintain close contact with operators in the private sector, in particular the grain traders and maritime transportation operators, to feed our action with an intelligence of the situation of trade and the needs on the ground, including for security, insurance, or trade finance. And third, of course, our main line of business is to leverage trade rules to work against the food crisis. At our recent WTO 12th Ministerial Conference, our members have adopted two historic decisions specific to food. In a ministerial declaration on the emergency response to food insecurity, our members underscored, I quote, the need for agri-food trade to flow and reaffirmed, I quote again, the importance of not imposing export prohibition or restrictions in a manner inconsistent with relevant WTO provisions. In this decision, our members also commit to facilitate trades in fertilizers and other agricultural trade input. There was a second decision, the second historic decision, where members agreed to not, I quote, impose export prohibition or restriction of foodstuff purchased for non-commercial humanitarian purposes by the World Food Programme. This is, of course, without prejudice to members on domestic food security needs. I'm pleased to report that the World Food Programme has informed the WTO that since the adoption of this decision, some of its food purchases have already been unblocked. After 20 years of negotiation, the WTO also succeeded in adopting a historic agreement on fisheries subsidies to limit environmentally unsustainable practices. This will also contribute to better global food security. Beyond these responses, the WTO has much unfinished business. It must continue the process of agricultural trade reform. I'm confident that the momentum that we gained at our last ministerial conference will push us forward. Reforming distorting trade practices will directly contribute to increasing food security in the future. Finally, allow me to say that Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, our DG, and all of us at the WTO Secretariat, we attach enormous importance to this cause and to the collaboration with the Committee on World Food Security and the Global Crisis Response Group established by the United Nations Secretary General. Count on us. Thank you for your attention.